Namaste, aloha. My name is Janapati Das, and welcome again to the Krishna Katha, Krishna book reading. I'd like to offer my most humble obeisances unto you for tuning in. Please, if you have not already, remember to subscribe to my channel, like and comment as well, and share. I'd like to offer respectful obeisances unto my Guru Dev, my spiritual master, Jagat Guru Siddha Swarupananda Paramhamsa Prabhupada, and His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. We are going to continue on with the exciting stories of the liberation of King Jaradsandha, continuing from our previous story. But first, as always, as laid out by the Supreme Lord himself, Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, the prime benediction, the recommended form of sacrifice in this day and age is the hearing and repeating of Krishna's holy names through kirtan and other processes. So please join in. Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prastaya Bhutale Srimate Siddha Swarupananda Paramamsa Itim Namine Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prastaya Bhutale Srimate Siddha Swarupananda Paramamsa Itim Namine Bhaja Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shri Vasudeva Bhakta Vrinda Bhaja Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shri Vasudeva Bhakta Vrinda Haribol Nitai Gaur Nitai Gaur Haribol 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 Hare Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare Hare Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare Gauranga 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 Hare Bol Chaitanya 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 Haribo, Gauranga, Gauranga, Gauranga Haribo, Chaitanya, Chaitanya, Chaitanya Haribo, Haribo, Haribo. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Jai Shri Prabhupada. Thank you for tuning in again. We've been reading about Lord Krishna in Indraprastha city, and of course we know the dilemma of whether to liberate the 16,000 kings, or how many thousands of kings that were being imprisoned by King Jaradsandha, and to take care of his problem, or to go to the Rajasuya sacrifice. And of course, Krishna went to go see the Pandava brothers at Indraprastha to pay their respect, but to explain his mission to basically eliminate King Jaradsandha and to liberate the princes and kings that were being held captive by him before they decided to do the Rajasuya sacrifice. So this is entitled Liberation of King Jaradsandha. In the great assembly of respectable persons, citizens, friends, relatives, Brahmanas, Kshatriyas, and Vaishyas. So we know those are three, the caste in the Varnashram system, the Brahmanas, the Kshatriyas, the Vaishyas, and of course the Shudras, which are not included here. King Yudhishthira, in the presence of all, included his brother, directly addressed Lord Krishna as follows: My dear Lord Krishna, the sacrifice known as the Rajasuya Yajna is to be performed by the emperor, and it is considered to be the king of all sacrifices. By performing this sacrifice, I wish to satisfy all the demigods who are your empowered representatives within this material world. And I wish that you would kindly help me in this great adventure so that it may be successfully executed. As far as the Pandavas are concerned, we have nothing to ask from the demigods. We are personally fully satisfied by being your devotees. As you say in the Bhagavad Gita, persons who are bewildered by material desires worship the demigods. But our purpose is different. I want to perform this Rajasuya sacrifice and invite the demigods to show them that they have no power independent of you. They are all your servants, and you are the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Foolish persons with a poor fund of knowledge consider your lordship an ordinary human being. Sometimes they try to find fault in you, and sometimes they defame you. Therefore, I wish to perform this Rajasuya Yajna. Yajna, of course, means sacrifice. Right? There are so many kinds of sacrifices, but the Supreme Lord Sri Krishna also has a name as Yajna, because he is the benefactor of all sacrifices, of all yajnas. I wish to invite all the demigods, beginning from Lord Brahma, Lord Shiva, and other exalted chiefs of the heavenly planets, and in that great assembly of demigods from all parts of the universe, I want to substantiate that you are the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and that everyone is your servant. So in this day and age, actually, the Vedic system is pretty corrupted in the age of Kali, and many so-called followers of the Hindu faith are basically in it for the buck and for the wealth and happiness, as most people are in this material world, but more so nowadays. People worship demigods for good wives, good husbands, wealth, health, this and that. And it's sort of forgotten that the demigods are actually the servants of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, deputed by Krishna to, as you would have a company, every company has a CEO, and the CEO deputes different roles to different managers and workers. So there are so many millions of demigods. I think something like 33 million demigods that do different kinds of functions and whatnot. My dear Lord, those who are constantly in Krishna consciousness and who think of your lotus feet or of your shoes certainly becomes free from the contamination of material life. We think of the same thing with our spiritual master. We think of we make reference to surrendering to the lotus feet. In other words, the lowest point is also the dirtiest point, below the feet, lower than a straw on the street, right? So dirty. We take the humility of realizing that we are the most fallen individual, and that only at the feet, at the lowest, the most humble point of servitude to our Guru Dev and to Krishna, will we find true happiness. My dear Lord, those who are constantly in Krishna consciousness and who think of your lotus feet or of your shoes certainly become free from all contamination of material life. Persons who are engaged in your service in full Krishna consciousness, who meditate upon you only and who offer prayers unto you, are purified souls. Being constantly engaged in Krishna conscious service, such persons become freed from the cycle of repeated birth and death. That's the key. They do not even desire to become freed from this material existence or to enjoy material opulences. Their desires are fulfilled by Krishna conscious activity. So I'm doing a lot of research actually on corruption, and corruption specifically in religion, and specifically and within like the Christian faith of like mega churches and gurus who come in as gurus, and how they become corrupted by material opulences and material existence, starting to be completely deluded by Maya Devi into believing that they deserve, great, because God is there to bless them as a child of God and as a, preacher of the faith, that God is, they deserve this great material opulences, but they're actually manipulating and exploiting the followers into believing that they too can have great material opulence if they just give them money and the money they used for their own opulence. And so it's not even really used in Krishna's service. It's just used for their own exploitation of wealth. As far as we are concerned, we are fully surrendered unto your lotus feet, and by your grace we are so fortunate to see you personally. So this is a good point, because King Yudhisthira, these preachers or whatnot, they're very opulent materially. Even the billionaires, they did not really even have the material wealth that King Yudhisthira had as the emperor of the world. But King Yudhisthira was not attached as a devotee of Krishna. He just played the role. In the end of his life, even though he had all this wealth, and many times him and his brother lost this wealth, they weren't attached to it. Whether they were in abject poverty or extreme wealth, they stayed focused, one point focused on Krishna. And even at the end of their life, they walked, all the Pandava brothers took off all their robes and rings and trinkets and walked away from all that wealth to go off and to meditate in the forest just as a yogi. So this is a difference that, Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada said in the Bhagavad Gita that a person should not take to religious life if they are doing it for name and fame only. We should only do it for the sake of Krishna and our Guru Dev. We only engage in spiritual life because of Krishna. Come to know Krishna. That is the point, not great opulence or great wealth. Sometimes you get these things by karma, but you're not attached to it. You never become attached to it because you understand that it is, the allotment that has been given to you by Krishna for his service. So, therefore, we have no desire for material opulences. The verdict of the Vedic wisdom is that you are the Supreme Personality of Godhead. I want to establish this fact, and I also want to show the world the difference between accepting you as the Supreme Personality of Godhead and accepting you as an ordinary, powerful, historical person, which many people did at that time, even though we're around, and many people do. Krishna is this great historical person, human. I wish to show the world that one can attain the highest perfection of life simply by taking shelter at your lotus feet, exactly as one can satisfy the branches, twigs, leaves, and flowers of an entire tree simply by watering the roots. So your King Yudhisthira is, as a devotee of Krishna, he already has the blessings of Krishna as a devotee, but he wants the whole world to know And so the devotee of Krishna is the same way. They want to praise Krishna. They want to teach people about Krishna and show people that Krishna is the source, that the material world and everything within it belongs, is owned and controlled by Krishna. that no one is, one should not over endeavor, as Rupa Goswami Prabhupada would say, one should not over endeavor for material enjoyment and material opulences. It will come according to, your karma. So, one can satisfy everyone, the demigods, everyone, by watering the root, by serving Krishna, because Krishna is the source of all things. Thus, if one takes to Krishna consciousness, his life becomes fulfilled both materially and spiritually. So Jesus Christ, Lord Jesus Christ, who was a great Vaishnava devotee of Krishna, also made it clear, has told his disciples who were worried about, how are we going to maintain ourselves? Lord Jesus said, look to the for birds of the field and the birds in the air and the lilies of the field. Do they whine and complain about what they're going to get? No, God provides them with the things that they need. So one does not have to worry about. You serve Krishna. What you need, what you need, not by what you're greedy about, Krishna will provide. We cannot actually fulfill ourselves spiritually by any amount of wealth. And that is the problem. That is the problem. We cannot find, and actually, as it's said by many of the great saints, Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati, who stated the fact that one can never come to know Krishna, can never understand their true happiness in relationship with Krishna by over-endeavoring for material items. It's, in other words, directing that desire to have a loving relationship with Krishna to the accumulation of material wealth, which is what everybody does in this material world. We're all striving to try to satisfy ourselves one way or another, not knowing that the great oasis of satisfaction in this desert of material life is right nearby. The spiritual master says, hey, or if we're drowning in this ocean, we use another analogy the opposite way. The spiritual master comes with a life raft, in a life, one of those lifesaver things. He says, here, catch on, hold on. No, I don't want to do that. I'm trying to find happiness here, drowning in the material ocean. This does not mean that you are partial to the Krishna conscious person and are indifferent to the non-Krishna conscious person. You are equal to everyone. That is your declaration. You cannot be partial to one and not interested in others, because you are sitting in everyone's heart as a super soul and giving everyone the respective results of its fruitive activities. So Krishna is not partial to anyone. He's trying to instruct everyone, but he is giving what people desire. If a person wants to serve Krishna, Krishna makes that available to them. If a person wants to serve Maya, Krishna makes that available to them. So, if they don't want to serve God, so many people are like, well, why did God, do this to me? And it's not God doing anything to you. It's you doing it to yourself. God just lets the material world play according to how it's supposed to play, You give every living entity the chance to enjoy this material world as he desires. It says it right there. As super soul, you are sitting, so that's important. The chance to enjoy the material world as he desires. The chance. So that doesn't mean like he's, it's like when in the Constitution where it says the pursuit of happiness. So it doesn't mean that happiness is guaranteed in the Constitution. It's just the pursuit. It's just the attempt to try to find happiness. So similarly, here's a chance to try to find happiness in the material world, which does not exist in full. There is some happiness and there's some enjoyment in the material world, but it doesn't ultimately satisfy the living entity, because as a spirit soul, the material, it's like it doesn't touch the living entity. So they are constantly wanting that loving relationship with God, which is, God and Krishna and the living entity are part and parcel, as part and parcel of Krishna, right? The living entity is part and parcel of Krishna, the same material energy. So material energy, spiritual energy, spiritual energy. So therefore, that is the only satisfaction that can happen for a living entity who is spiritual also, not material. It's like, anyway, enough analogies. I'll just get on here. You cannot be partial to one and interested in others, because you are sitting in everyone's heart as supersoul and giving everyone the respective results of fruitive activities. You give every living entity the chance to enjoy this material world as he desires. As supersoul, you are sitting in the body along with the living entity, giving him the results of his own actions, as well as opportunities to turn toward your devotional service by developing Krishna consciousness. You openly declare that one should surrender unto you, giving up all other engagements, and that you will take charge of him, giving him relief from the reactions of all sins. You are like the desire tree in the heavenly planets, which rewards benediction according to one's desires. Everyone is free to achieve the highest perfection, but if one does not so desire, then your awarding of lesser benedictions is not due to partiality. So this kind of fear that is fear of going to hell, fear of suffering, is not the same as the fear of being displeasing to God. Because ultimately, it's a matter of, do we want to serve God or do we not want to serve God, or do we want to serve ourselves? We make the decision. We make the choice to basically whether we want to stay in the material world or whether we want to go back to God. That is very easily, and we can stay in the material world. We have been in the material world what seems like an eternity, but it's not, but it's a very long time. On hearing this statement of King Yudhisthira, Lord Krishna replied as follows: My dear King Yudhisthira, O killer of enemies, O ideal justice personified. Now, you remember, Yamaraj is the father of King Yudhisthira. So he, of course, is the ideal, he's justice personified, like his father. I completely support your decision to perform the Rajasuya sacrifice. By performing this great sacrifice, your good name will remain well established forever in the history of human civilization. My dear king, may I inform you that it is a desire of all great sages, your forefathers, the demigods, and your relatives and friends, including myself, that you perform this sacrifice, and I think that it will satisfy every living entity. So in this time of the Vedic kingdom, the kings who are the most well-known, the most praised, this was an ideal, to have kings, to have administrators, and people who were leading people, who were godly, who were righteous, who had the well-being of humanity, the true well-being. In other words, yes, they provided materially for their kingdom, so there was no want, but ultimately they were able to point the people into the Vedic system, through the Vedic system, to show them the goal of life, to go back to Krishna. In this age of Kali, it's like our kings are lower than Shudras. So they're like cheaters cheaters who are leading the cheated, blind leading the blind. They don't have any spiritual vision. They want to lead their people in a culture of nescience, darkness, and ignorance, reinforcing that people are their bodies, their mind, their desires, whatever desire, if they want to be a boy or a girl, or identify as anything they want to identify, follow anything they want to follow, this is what, it's the freedom of the person. It's not freedom. It's actually bondage. It's not real freedom. It doesn't, the leaders are not like King Yudhisthira. They don't have the well-being of, they have their own well-being materially to enjoy their through fruitive activity, just like the people that they lead. So we have a very hellish civilization that is actually going downhill and quickly and will continue to go downhill. Even though people say that we're making great advancements scientifically and technologically and economically, actually we are descending further and further. So it's good lesson to learn from great kings like King Yudhishthira about the real meaning of leadership and administration. My dear king, I inform you that it is the desire of all great sages, your forefathers, the demigods, and your relatives and friends, including myself, that you perform this sacrifice, and I think it will satisfy every living entity. But because it is necessary, I request that you first of all conquer the kings of the world and collect all requisite paraphernalia for executing this great sacrifice. So Krishna's laying out this reason in Rajasuya to basically for the king to bring all control to the world, to be an emperor of the world. And when I mean control, it's not, most of the time it's not through bloodshed, but basically through an understanding of diplomacy, that most leaders understand the godliness of King Yudhishthira, and that he's well equipped to be the world leader, and that it's in the best result for their kingdom to be in trade and relationship through this king and to take shelter of King Yudhishthira. Of course, there are those who are demoniac kings and they want to fight, and the point is to basically to conquer those people and force them to be in adherence with the one world kingdom. My dear King Yudhishthira, your four brothers are direct representatives of important demigods like Varuna, Indra, etc. It is said that Bhima was born of the demigod Varuna and Arjuna was born of the demigod Indra, whereas King Yudhishthira himself was born of the demigod Yamaraj. Your brothers are great heroes, and you are the most pious and self-controlled king, and are therefore known as Dharmaraj, which is the king of all religion, right? All of you are so qualified in devotional service unto me that automatically I have become rivaled by you. And Dharma is, when we turn this reference of religion, when we think about modern day religion, it's kind of hard to say it's sort of the same thing. The idea of religion was actually a way of living, living in the material world according to spiritual premises. So it wasn't like you were joining something. You can't join a dharma. Dharma is inherently the way that you're supposed to live. And so it's easy to say that many people in this world do not have dharma, or even the people that are in religion, many of them don't have dharma too. It's more just a way of show. I'm a Christian, I'm a Hindu, I'm a Muslim, I'm a Buddhist. And that's just sort of a label. My religion is better than your religion. They don't understand that dharma is actually an internal way of living. Can't really separate it like you would. Water and wetness are inherent in each other. So you could be a Muslim and have dharma, and doesn't mean that your so-called religion that you are doing is the right way. Lord Krishna told King Yudhishthira that he becomes conquered by the love of one who has conquered his senses. One who has not conquered his senses cannot conquer the Supreme Personality of Godhead. This is the secret of devotional service. To conquer the senses, means to engage them constantly in the service of the Lord. Right? We engage our senses in the service of the Lord. That means Goswami, a master of one's senses. A Godas means the servant of their senses. So many people in this material world are a servant of their senses because whatever their senses want, they will serve it. I want to eat something right now, I'm going to go eat something. I want to engage in some sexual thing, I'm going to do that. If I want to hear this, I'm going to do that. I feel like my senses of hearing want to do that. I want to look at pornography. My eyes are telling me I want to look at pornography. Then I serve my eyes. So but actually to be able to utilize our senses in the service by being in charge of them, we say, oh no, we engage our eyes in looking at Krishna. We use our ears to hear the chanting of Krishna's names. We use our tongue to speak the names of Krishna, or to taste prasadam. We use the sense of touch to do our japa beads, or to, sense of smell, to smell the flower that was offered to the deity. So those are all means by which to conquer our senses, in other words, to utilize them in the service of Krishna, so that they become secondhand, that we're attracted to, that our senses want to go to do that. The specific qualification of all the Pandava brothers was that they engaged their senses in the service of the Lord. One who thus engages his senses becomes purified, right? So our senses are become purified. Right now they're contaminated because they are contaminated by the material energy, so that they think that their pleasure will come through being served, serving the senses for our own pleasure, instead of for Krishna's senses, right? That's ultimately what we're doing. We're utilizing our senses to serve Krishna's senses. One who thus engages his senses become purified, and with purified senses one can actually render service to the Lord. The Lord can thus be conquered by the devotee by loving transcendental service. So of course, through the purification of utilizing the senses and offering to Krishna's senses, they become attractive. And then there is a purification, and then the our natural loving becomes uncovered, like a diamond that's covered by dirt is cleaned off. You can see the shininess, right? Similarly, that natural loving relationship of devotion is revealed. Lord Krishna continued, there is no one in the three worlds of the universe, including the powerful demigods, who can surpass my devotees in any of the six opulences, namely wealth, strength, reputation, beauty, knowledge, and renunciation. Therefore, if you want to conquer the worldly kings, there is no possibility of their emerging victorious. When Lord Krishna thus encouraged King Yudhisthira, the king's face brightened like a blossoming flowers because of transcendental happiness, and thus he ordered his younger brothers to conquer all the worldly kings in all directions. So the devotee, pure devotee like King Yudhisthira, being instructed by the Supreme Lord, of course, King Yudhisthira is like, this is wonderful. I'm being given instructions. It's non-different than experiencing that loving relationship with Krishna. Lord Krishna empowered the Pandava to execute his great mission of chastising the infidel miscreants of the world and giving protection to his faithful devotees. In his Vishnu form, the Lord therefore carries 4 kinds of weapons in his 4 hands. He carries a lotus flower and a conch shell in his 2 hands, and in the other 2 hands he carries a club and a disc. The club and disc are meant for the non-devotees, but because the Lord is a supreme absolute, the resultant action of all of his weapons is one and the same. With the club and the disc he chastised the miscreants so that they may come to their senses and know that they are not all in all. Over them there is a Supreme Lord, and by bugling with his conch shell and by offering blessings with the lotus flower, he always assures the devotees that no one can vanquish them, even in the greatest calamity. King Yudhisthira, being thus assured by the indication of Lord Krishna, ordered his youngest brother, Sahadev, accompanied by soldiers of the Srinjaya tribe, to conquer the southern countries. Similarly, he ordered Nakula, accompanied by the soldiers of Matsya Desha, to conquer the kings of the western side. He sent Arjuna, accompanied by the soldiers of Kekaya Desha, to conquer the kings of the northern side, and Bhimashena, accompanied by the soldiers of Madra Desha, Madras, was ordered to conquer the kings on the eastern side. It may be noted that by dispatching his younger brothers to conquer in different directions, King Yudhisthira did not actually intend that they declare war with the kings. Actually, the brothers started for different directions to inform the respective kings about King Yudhisthira's intention to perform the Rajasuya sacrifice. The kings were thus informed that they were required to pay their taxes for the execution of the sacrifice. This payment of taxes to Emperor Yudhisthira meant that the king accepted his subjugation before him. So this wasn't like, oh, I'm going to conquer and destroy, right? It was just basically sent out people, let people know this is what's going on. You pay tax, and the taxes is like a service because Lord Krishna is blessing this. As this is what he wants. So the Supreme Lord is, supporting this. And all these kings are offering homage, not only to King Yudhisthira, who has been devoted to Krishna, but Lord Sri Krishna. So it's good for them too. They were brought before King Yudhisthira by his brothers. So they brought all this presentations. They were given taxes and wealth, and it's just part of the scene. King Yudhisthira was very anxious, however, when he heard that King Jaradsandha Magadha did not accept his sovereignty. Seeing King Yudhisthira's anxiety, Lord Krishna informed him of the plan explained by Uddhava for conquering King Jaradsandha. Bhimasena, Arjuna, and Lord Krishna then started for Girivraj, the capital city of Jaradsandha, dressing themselves in the garb of Brahmanas. This was the plan devised by Uddhava before Lord Krishna started for Hastinapura, and now it was given practical application. So Uddhava had made it, known that they were going to dress as Brahmanas because they knew that King Jaradsandha was very giving to Brahmanas, and even though they all looked like Kshatriyas, warriors, he was like, well, they're in the dress of Brahmanas, I will do that. King Jaradsandha was a very dutiful householder, and he had great respect for the Brahmanas. He was a great fighter, a Kshatriya king, but he was never neglectful of the Vedic injunctions. According to Vedic injunctions, the Brahmanas are considered to be the spiritual masters of all other castes. Lord Krishna, Arjuna, and Bhimasena were actually Kshatriyas, but they dressed themselves as Brahmanas. And at the time when King Jaradsandha was to give charity to the Brahmanas and receive them as guests, they approached him. Lord Krishna, in the dress of a Brahmana, said to the king, "We wish all glories to your majesty. We are 3 guests at your royal palace, and we are coming from a great distance. We have come to ask you for charity, and we hope that you will kindly bestow upon us whatever we ask from you. We know about your good qualities. A person who is tolerant is always prepared to tolerate everything, even though distressful. Just as a criminal can perform the most abominable acts, so a great charitable person like yourself can give anything and everything he has asked for. For a great personality like you, there is no distinction between relatives and outsiders. A famous person lives forever, even after his death. Therefore, any person who is completely fit and able to execute acts which will perpetuate his good name and fame, and yet does not do so, becomes abominable in the eyes of great persons." Once again, another important point for these people who have such great wealth, preachers and whatnot, and the people that are serving them are just in abject poverty. They don't use their wealth to help the people in their congregations. They use it for their own glory, which is another one saying that if somebody is, but they also, they're also making a point here. Krishna is making the point that, your name and fame will be famous because of your good works that you do, right? Such a person cannot be condemned enough, and his refusal to give charity is lamentable throughout his whole life. Your Majesty must have heard the glorious names of charitable persons such as Harish Chandra, Ranti Deva, and Mudgala, who used to live only on grains picked up by the paddy field, and the great Maharaj Shibi, who saved the life of a pigeon by supplying flesh from his own body. These great personalities have obtained immortal fame simply by sacrificing this temporary and perishable body. Lord Krishna, in the garb of a Brahmana, thus informed Jaradsandha that fame is imperishable, but the body is perishable. If one can attain imperishable name and fame by sacrificing his perishable body, he becomes a very respectable figure in the history of human civilization. When Lord Krishna was speaking in the garb of a Brahmana, along with Arjuna and Bhima, Jaradsandha marked that the 3 of them did not appear to be actual Brahmanas. There were signs on their bodies by which Jaradsandha could understand that they were Kshatriyas. Their shoulders were marked with an impression due to carrying bows. They had beautiful bodily structure, and their voices were grave and commanding. And thus he definitely concluded that they were not Brahmanas but Kshatriyas. He was also thinking that he had seen them somewhere before. Although these three persons were kshatriyas, they had come to his door begging alms like brahmanas. Therefore, he decided that he would fulfill their desires in spite of their being kshatriyas. He thought in this way, because of their position had already been diminished by their appearing before him as beggars, under the circumstances, he thought, I am prepared to give them anything, even if they ask for my body. I shall not hesitate to offer it to them. In this regard, he began to think of Bali Maharaj. Lord Vishnu, in the dress of a Brahmana, appeared to be as a beggar before Bali, and in that way he snatched away all of his opulence and kingdom. He did this for the benefit of Indra, who, having been defeated by Bali Maharaj, was bereft of his kingdom. Although Bali Maharaj was cheated, his reputation as a great devotee was able to give anything and everything in charity is still glorified throughout the three worlds. Bali Maharaj could guess that the Brahmana was Lord Vishnu himself, and that he had come to them just to take away his opulent kingdom on behalf of Indra. Bali's spiritual master and family priest Shukracharya repeatedly warned him about this, and yet Bali did not hesitate to give in charity whatever the Brahmana wanted, and at last he gave up everything to that Brahmana. So in that story, of course, in the Srimad Bhagavatam, Vamanadev, Lord Vishnu, Lord Krishna, had come asking for charity, three simple things. And he said, well, I want 3 steps of land. Of course, he was the Supreme Lord, so he stepped through all the 3 worlds, the lower planets, the middle planets, and the heavenly planets. And therefore, everything that Bali Maharaj had owned, including Indra's kingdom, great kingdom, of course, was given back to Vamanadev, and Vamanadev, of course, gave it back to Lord Indra. But in that process of giving everything, absolutely everything that you have to Krishna, to the Supreme Lord, including his own body, he was praised as a great devotee from that point on. It is my strong determination, thought Jaradsandha, if I can achieve immortal reputation by sacrificing this perishable body, I must act for that purpose. The life of a kshatriya who does not live for the benefit of the Brahmana is actually condemned. Actually, King Jaradsandha was very liberal in giving charity to the Brahmanas, and thus he informed Lord Krishna, Bhima, and Arjuna, my dear Brahmanas, you can ask for me whatever you like. If you so desire, you can take my head also. I am prepared to give it. After this, Lord Krishna addressed Jaradsandha as follows. My dear king, please note that we are not actually Brahmanas, nor have we come to ask for foodstuffs and grains. We are all kshatriyas, and we have come to beg a duel with you. We hope that you will agree to this proposal. You may note that here is the second son of King Pandu, Bhimasena, and the third son of Pandu, Arjuna. As for myself, you may know that I am your old enemy, Krishna, the son of Pandava, this cousin of the Pandavas. When Lord Krishna disclosed their disguise, King Jaradsandha began to laugh very loudly, and then in great anger and in a grave voice he exclaimed, you fools, if you want to fight with me, I immediately grant your request. But Krishna, I know that you are a coward. I refuse to fight with you because you become very confused when you face me in fighting, even though you lost 17 times. The 18th time Krishna left, so he's thinking, being very puffed up like stupid demons are. I refuse to fight with you because you become very confused when you face me in fighting. Out of fear of me, you left your own city, Mathura, and now you have taken shelter within the sea. I really did that to protect the devotees, right? Therefore, I must refuse to fight with you. As far as Arjuna is concerned, I know that he is younger than me and not an equal fighter, which is not true. I refuse to fight with him because he is not in any way my an equal competitor. But as far as Bhimasena is concerned, I think he is a suitable competitor to fight with me. After speaking in this way, King Jaradsandha immediately handed a very heavy club to Bhimasena, and he himself took another, and thus all of them went outside the city walls to fight. Bhimasena and King Jaradsandha engaged themselves in fighting, and with their respective clubs, which were as strong as thunderbolts, they began to strike one another very severely, both of them being very eager to fight. They were both expert fighters with clubs, and their techniques of striking one another were so beautiful that they appeared to be 2 dramatic artists. dancing on the stage. When the clubs of Jaradsandha and Bhimashena loudly collided, they sounded like the impact of big tusks of two fighting elephants, or like a thunderbolt in a flashing electrical storm. When two elephants fight together in a sugar cane, each of them snatches a stick of sugar cane, and by catching it tightly in its trunk, strike the other. Each elephant heavily strikes his enemy's shoulders, arms, collarbones, chest, thighs, waist, and legs. And in this way, the sticks of sugar cane are smashed. Similarly, all the clubs used by Jaradsandha and Bhimashena were broken, and so the two enemies prepared to fight with their strong-fisted hands. Both Jaradsandha and Bhimashena were very angry, and they began to smash each other with their fists. The striking of their fists sounded like the striking of iron bars, or like the sound of thunderbolts, and they appeared to be like two elephants fighting. Unfortunately, however, neither was able to defeat the other, but because both were very expert in fighting, both were of equal strength, and their fighting techniques were equal also. Neither Jaradsandha nor Bhimashena became fatigued or defeated in the fighting, although they struck each other continually. At the end of the day's fighting, they lived a night as friends in Jaradsandha's palace, and the next day they fought again. In this way, they passed 27 days in fighting. So it's very interesting, right? The Kshatriya code was that you respect the level of fighting, but when you're not fighting, you act like brothers and share food and have go into the palace, and it's not like oh, I hate you forever, even though they may hate each other. They live by the code just to a T. On the 28th day, Bhimashena told Krishna, "My dear Krishna, I must frankly admit that I cannot conquer Jaradsandha." Lord Krishna, however, knew the mystery of the birth of Jaradsandha. Jaradsandha was born in two different parts from two different mothers. When his father saw that the baby was useless, he threw the two parts in the forest, where they were later found by a black-hearted witch named Jara. She managed to join the two parts of the baby from top to bottom, like Frankenstein's monster. Knowing this, Lord Krishna therefore also knew how to kill him. He gave hints to Bhimashena that Jaradsandha was brought to life by the joining of the two parts of the body. He could be killed by the separation of these two parts. Thus, Lord Krishna transferred his power into the body of Bhimashena and informed him of his device by which Jaradsandha could be killed. Lord Krishna immediately picked up a twig from a tree and, taking it in his hand, bifurcated it. He split it in half, just like he's baka, the bird, right? Split him in half. In this way, he hinted to Bhimashena how Jaradsandha could be killed. Lord Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, is omnipotent. If he wants someone to kill someone, no one can save that person. Similarly, if he wants to save someone, no one can kill him. Informed by the hints of Lord Krishna, Bhimashena immediately took hold of the legs of Jaradsandha and threw him on the ground. When Jaradsandha fell to the ground, Bhimashena immediately pressed one of Jaradsandha's legs to the ground and took hold of the other leg with his two hands. Catching Jaradsandha in this way, he tore his body in two, beginning from the anus up to the head. As an elephant breaks the branches of a tree in two, so Bhimashena separated the body of Jaradsandha. The audience standing nearby saw that the body of Jaradsandha was now divided into two halves, so that each half had one leg, one thigh, one testicle, one breast, half a backbone, half a chest, one collarbone, one arm, one eye, one ear, and half a face. As soon as the news of Jaradsandha's death was announced, all the citizens of Magadha began to cry, "Alas, alas," while Lord Krishna and Arjuna embraced Bhimashena to congratulate him. Although Jaradsandha was killed, neither Krishna nor the two Pandava brothers made a claim to the throne. Their purpose in killing Jaradsandha was to stop him from creating a disturbance against the proper discharge of world peace. A demon always creates disturbances, whereas a demigod, always tries to keep peace in the world. The mission of Lord Krishna is to give protection to the righteous persons and to kill the demons who disturb a peaceful situation. So sometimes, as we see, it's not just the pacifism. We try to applied diplomacy in every situation as much as we can, just like in the case of the Battle of Kurukshetra, so much diplomacy was applied. But there are demoniac kings who cause problems, who cause distress, and they have to, in those cases, war is necessary. Killing is necessary to basically remove, like a cancer, a dangerous leader. Therefore, Lord Krishna immediately called for the son of Jaradsandha, whose name was Sahadev, and with due ritualistic ceremonies, he asked him to occupy the seat of his father and reign over the kingdom peacefully. Lord Krishna is the master of the whole cosmic creation. If he wants everyone to live peacefully and execute Krishna consciousness, and he wants everyone to live peacefully and execute Krishna consciousness. After installing Sahadev on the throne, he released all the kings and princes who have been imprisoned unnecessarily by Jaradsandha. Thus ends the Bhaktivedanta purport of the third volume, third chapter of Krishna, Liberation of King Jaradsandha. We will return to this next time to hear about the Rajasuya sacrifice and many more exciting stories, including Shishapala, the death of Shishapala. Let's chant a little bit. Haribo, Nitago, Nitago, Haribo. Haribo, Nitago, Nitago, Haribo. Haribo, Nitago, Nitago, Haribo. Haribo, Nitago, Nitago, Haribo. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Rama Rama, Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Rama Rama, Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Gauranga, 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 Gauranga. All right, Haribol. Thank you very much. We'll see you next time. Namaste.